Dorian Blake, a brilliant but eccentric book hunter and self-confessed bibliomaniac, heads the small firm Blake Associates Literary Investigations in San Francisco. From their loft-style office on Clementina Street, Dorian and his teammates track missing manuscripts, authenticate dubious discoveries, and navigate a shadow world of collectors, auction sharks, and occult bibliophiles. Each case is a mystery whose solution hinges on deep book lore, forensic bibliography, and treacherous human motives. Episode 4: Gutenberg's Shadow. The first body surfaced at dawn, bobbing in the pewter water beneath the pilings of Amsterdam's Single Canal. A bicycle bell chimed somewhere upriver as police lamps painted oily halos across the ripples. Two details ensured the story would ricochet around the art world before breakfast. The victim's right hand had been severed clean at the wrist, and that wrist still clenched a brittle scrap of 15th century parchment. On the scrap, in faded textura type, glimmered the phrase gratia, plenaria, full penitence, the opening line of an indulgence printed on Johann Gutenberg's press more than 5 centuries ago. By noon, the image, blood-speckled water, pale parchment, severed hand, had flashed through every antiquarian WhatsApp group on 2 continents. 15 minutes after that, the same image washed across an exposed brick wall inside a South of Market loft in San Francisco, home base of Blake & Associates, Literary Investigations. A single photograph had crossed an ocean and a century in the time it once took to mail a letter. Gutenberg would have understood the irony. He built the first high-speed rumor mill. Fog pressed hard against the loft's warehouse windows, blurring the Bay Bridge into ghost cables. Inside, Dorian Blake folded his arms, heartbeat ticking like a compositor's quoin while he studied the projection 6 feet wide. The indulgence looked flawless, too flawless. The capital G showed none of the tiny genuine 31-line pieces retained from hurried type shaving. The dry point ruling was misaligned a hair north-northwest, the same fractional error repeated 9 lines down. Only a printer trained to chase ghosts would notice. Leo Zhang, seated behind twin ultra-wide monitors, noticed. Metadata says Hasselblad X2D, Dutch homicide unit, 36 megapixels, he murmured. They haven't shown the reverse, no watermark read out, but check that faint blotting in the descender of the P, synthetic iron oak gall, UV peak off by 3 nanometers. Meera Patel, latex gloves bright against her brown hands, set aside a swab tray of leather fragments, the day's restoration job, and leaned in. Synthetic gall is conservation lab kit, she said, voice calm as distilled water. Expensive, traceable. Whoever planted that indulgence knows chemistry. From the doorway, Clara Reyes flipped her retired SFPD badge between fingers. Or whoever killed the authenticator does, she said. Her eyes stayed on the severed hand, mapping angles, calculating force the way some people read weather. A holographic window opened on the brick wall. Professor Giles Harrow, backlit by dusty Cambridge skylight, a mug of builder's tea in hand. The moment he saw the image, colour drained from his cheeks. That offset ruling, he breathed. I taught only 3 students to spot it. One is you, Dorian. Another, he swallowed, was Theo Brandt. Dorian's throat tightened. The corpse in the canal, he said, and the loft fell silent but for the bass moan of a harbour foghorn. 48 hours later, the news cycle spun anew. Lydia Serrano, senior consultant to Christie's, was found in her Chelsea flat, lifeless, left wrist ending in crimson thread, right hand severed and folded around another indulgence sheet. This time the watermark, a bull's head topped by a cross, was printed in mirror image, a perfect forgery flaunting its perfection. Auction houses froze every pending Gutenberg lot. Dealers treated incunabula like radioactive isotopes. At dawn, an insurance underwriter rang Blake & Associates, asking how much liability coverage they carried for international counsel. The freight elevator rattled and fog rolled in when Helena Cloth arrived. tall, glacial-poised managing partner at Cloth and Rouser Rare Assets. She wore a charcoal pantsuit and nitrile gloves the color of iceberg shadows. Without introduction, she set a half-inch contract on Dorian's desk. Find the forger, stop the killings, verify the real sheets. Every day the market stays frozen, drains $6.8 million, she said. Dorian spun a bronze Hypatia drachma across his knuckles. Your last claims investigator was Theo. Dead. You think the killer won't read the syndicate masthead? Helena squeezed the contract. I think your team plays chess while everyone else pushes checkers, she said, and I think you despise murder in the House of Memory. 20 minutes later, signatures dried, an advance lit Leo's phone, and Blake and Associates accepted the case. They began, as they always did, in the lab, mirror beneath floodlights, unfolding her arsenal of optics. Raman spectrometer, hyperspectral imager, digital SEM. Helena passed over the Amsterdam scrap, chain of custody tag still damp. Under 20 power magnification, the ink's halo fluoresced red-brown, not the warm amber of medieval Gaul, and peaked at 465 nanometers, 3 shy of history. Leo mapped supply chains. Only 8 labs synthesized Gaul that precise. 2 were in Germany. 1, Heliotrope Analytical, had serviced a private letterpress workshop in Mainz. Shipments routed through a single desk forwarder. Meridian Logistic, Frankfurt. Clara dug through Europol. Meridian once shipped stolen Torah scrolls. Red flag enough to fly. They crossed the Atlantic in upgraded seats, Leo's argument that lumbar support improved deductive reasoning. Night, cabin dim. Dorian failed to sleep. Mira sketched molecular lattices. Clara traced ligature wounds across tablet screens, noting identical serrations that bespoke German-made cable ties. Leo wrote code to pattern-match reversed watermarks across image boards and darknet sails. 30,000 feet above Iceland, Harrow pinged a file, an 1854 lawsuit in which Mainz printers' descendants bickered over reversed watermarks. A marginal note by a forgotten librarian hinted at a shadow exemplar, a master indulgence held back for emergencies, never sold, perhaps never publicly seen. A single sheet, perfect, priceless. 8 figures, easily, more than enough motive. Frankfurt greeted them with drizzle and the sour smell of apple wine. Meridian's storefront was a frost-filmed glass door guarding one coffee-stained desk. A clerk with insomnia eyes claimed no heliotrope account until Clara produced her Europol liaison badge. Suddenly, invoices materialized. Recipient, G. Lehmann, Gutenberg. Research Fellowship, Johanneskirche, Mainz. Harrow's voice crackled through speakerphone. Gregor Lehmann chaired the Global Authenticity Panel. Next month, he was to audit Theo Brandt's collection. They boarded an ice train that knifed south along vineyards and slate cliffs. Fog hugged the Rhine like gauze on a wound. That night, Mainz glimmered beneath cathedral floodlights. Scaffolding wrapped Johanneskirche. Inside its fellowship annex, they found chaos. Shattered glass, toppled presses, reagent puddles. The Raman spectrometer Mira had hoped to borrow, smashed beyond salvage. On a proofing table lay Gregor Lehmann, unconscious, one hand severed, a printer's apron cinched as tourniquet. Pinned above him, an indulgence sheet bled fresh ink. Forensic perfection, offset ruling, misaligned exactly like the canal forgery. Paramedics rushed Lehmann away. Mira collected vials of spilled chemicals. Among the shards, she found singed rag paper test strips. Under a portable SEM, the fibers revealed an isotope signature pointing not to medieval linen, but to 21st century Uzbek cotton. Someone had brewed forgeries in this very lab before the attack. In a cupboard, Clara unearthed a roll of contact film, indulgence watermarks under oblique light. One frame showed an emblem, no catalogue listed, an S entwined with a crossbow. Lehmann had scribbled, "Shadow exemplar? Confirm with Basel Jesuits." Dorian pocketed the film. The ground beneath the case shifted. At the hospital, Lehmann drifted between morphine clouds. He muttered, "Not Solomon alone. Financier, altar, Rhine Consortium, must own the market by Frankfurt Book Fair. They will burn history if it refuses to sell. Alt-R. The name tasted like cold metal. Back in their hotel suite, they cracked open Lehman's encrypted drives. Folder title, Project G, Schattenpresse. Blueprints unfolded. An oak and iron replica of Gutenberg's press. Servo motors precise to microns, capable of printing 2 layers, visible ink and ultraviolet hash. Each sheet encoded timestamp, GPS press coordinates, and Lehman's monogram. Invisible, unforgeable, unless stolen. Address lines pointed to a riverside shed. They went after midnight. The door's padlock unscrewed as if expectation had loosened it. Inside, the press chuffed quietly, breath of pistons. Drying racks held sheets, some blank, others mid-ink. Under UV strobe, a tilted sunburst shimmered, a secret watermark. Near the press, a cooler hissed with dry ice. Inside lay a severed hand sealed in plastic. Fingerprint scan later confirmed. Marcus Vallaton, Parisian expert, alive or not unknown. A phone vibrated atop a spool of linen twine. Dorian answered. A voice, gravel fed through modulation, whispered, "You are in the shadow now, Blake. The indulgence pardons all sin, except ignorance. Leave Mainz or the next hand severed will be yours." Before he could reply, the line died. Leo traced the ping. Tor relay, exit node in Wiesbaden. They fled seconds before police cruisers arrived, summoned by silent alarms Clara activated during entry. Back at the hotel, Mira analyzed Lehmann's UV formula, found trace gold leaf hammered in 1482 Nuremberg. Authenticity on a molecular level. That gold could be sourced today from only one surviving family business, the Falkenauers. Leo discovered Falkenauer shipments to Basel, billed to Alt-R Stiftung. The noose tightened. Driven by the Wiesbaden ping, they tracked Cantus 13, a soundstage in an industrial bunker. Leo booked studio time posing as a producer of medieval chant. Inside, engineer Roland Brandt, Theo's estranged younger brother, froze at their arrival. His mixing board still showed the chant file embedded with trackable noise. Under Clara's gaze, he cracked. Soliman had paid him to lace ransom calls with metadata and to forward UV flash powders to Basel Freeport. Roland had swallowed the story that it was performance art until Theo died. His guilt spilled names: Alt-R Stiftung, code-named Pfalzgraf, Freeport vault deeper than D17, master keycard in Roland's desk. Outside, shipping cranes groaned. Inside, truth shifted weight. Meanwhile, Leo's darknet crawler snagged an invitation-only listing, 5 prime indulgence sheets verified by state-of-the-art UV matrix, opening bid €20 million, private showing at an undisclosed Basel location the eve before Frankfurt Book Fair. Seller, alias, Janus Acta, Latin for two-faced deeds. IP traces pointed to Soliman's device range. To tighten the chain, Mira met a Falkenauer apprentice in a Würzburg beer hall under the guise of purchasing gold leaf for a restoration. The apprentice bragged, half-drunk, that an aristocratic foundation had ordered 30 grams micron-sliced, paid in uncut sapphires. Gold of kings traded for stones of princes, the past negotiating with itself. Paris added threads. Through baritone sax riffs and clinking glasses in a jazz club beneath Rue des Lombards, Lulu, pickpocket-turned-art spy, sold them Soliman's travel dossier. Basel Freeport pod, D17, and a titanium briefcase bearing Mainz Cathedral's crest. She also delivered gossip. Alt-R's envoy Pfalzgraf would inspect the sheets before Frankfurt. Clara could not shake guilt over Vallaton. Against orders, she descended at dawn into Paris's off-grid catacombs, labyrinth of bones and murals. Graffiti arrows pointed her to a candlelit exchange chamber where couriers traded contraband folios. There she confronted Le Courrier, wiry, eyes fox-sharp, wearing Vallaton's vintage watch. Conversation turned to standoff to confession. Vallaton sold alive for a discount because he was extra inspirating when you needed a hand. Clara cuffed the courier to a limestone pillar, mirror of every maimed victim, and returned with the watch and heavier shoulders. Night train to Basel rattled through thunder over the Vosges. Leo refined a virus to brick Solomon's portable press if it touched Wi-Fi. Mira assembled an iodine-based suppressant for thermite. Clara polished her sidearm. Dorian memorized Jesuit phone numbers. Harrow fed intel. The Jesuit archives once guarded a specimen called the Prince's Edition, believed by some to be the shadow exemplar. But 2 weeks ago, archivists found the vault empty, the lock intact. Inside job. Altar's finger pressed deeper. Basel Freeport squatted like a concrete iceberg. Small tip for visiting VIPs. Vast mass of subterranean vaults. Electronic sniffer gates flagged cellulose densities. Blake and Associates passed as insurance auditors. They located D17, confronted Solomon feeding medieval parchment into a servo-driven press, gloves wet with fresh blood from Valentin's missing hand. In a voice slick as olive oil, he laid out the scheme. With layman's matrix, he could print perfect indulgences, tank the existing market, buy real ones for pennies, then reveal the hidden UV seal only he possessed. Fire and ink. Gutenberg would approve, he laughed. Clara neutralized a guard with a disarming twist. Mira cut Vallotton free. Leo's virus crippled the press console. Solomon triggered thermite charges, fled. Dorian pursued. They fought between crates of Petrus and Picasso's. Broken Bordeaux glass slashed Dorian's forearm. Solomon escaped into a lift that jammed halfway. Meanwhile, sprinklers failed against white-hot thermite. Mira's iodine suppressant choked flames to sullen glow. They shoved genuine sheets onto a handcart and hustled Vallotton toward freight lifts as alarms shrieked. Customs agents cornered Solomon, bleeding and enraged, but deeper sirens wailed, a vault purge remote-triggered. Roland's master key led them down a maintenance ladder to Altar's secret wing. Metal door hissed open. Rows of mobile shelving stretched like time's spine. Indulgences, papal bulls, Hussite broadsheets, Luther pamphlets, all ordered and sealed. In a glass case at the aisle's heart lay perfection. The shadow exemplar, watermark, S crossbow, rubricated in umbra fidei, in the shadow of faith, maybe Gutenberg's own hand. Above, red thermal lances blinked. 90 seconds to incinerate. Mira sprinted to a control panel. Override required 6 digits. Dorian's mind leapt to layman's monogram algorithm. Year-based seed. He scanned the exemplar under UV, sunburst with digits 145400. He punched the code. Countdown froze at 12. Fans shut down. Parchment survived. They documented every shelf for Interpol, then ascended bearing the shadow exemplar. Solomon saw the case and howled, watching a dream turn indictment. But Dorian no longer cared about his fury. History had vacated the shadows. 3 weeks later, in The Hague, interrogation lights glared off white tile. Solomon sat, left palm branded by the molten UV sunburst, vanity turned stigma. Clara leafed through crime scene photos until he lowered his eyes. Behind the mirrored glass, an Altar attorney waited, but Swiss prosecutors now possessed more than rumor. Leo traced Pfalzgraf's metadata to Baron Reichardt von Pfalz, Rhine shipping magnate bankrolling extremist heritage projects. Warrants sprouted across cantons. Back in San Francisco, fog swirled like printer's smoke over the Embarcadero. The shadow exemplar rested in a Library of Congress cold vault, its digitized twin released open access worldwide, Harrow's one non-negotiable demand. Layman, sporting a prosthesis of silver and oak carved into a miniature press handle, video linked to the unveiling, and quoted Isaiah, "The ink shall not fade." Auction houses quietly reinstated Gutenberg's sales, now subject to Mira's database of synthetic ink fingerprints. 6 minor forgeries died on the block the first week. Leo swapped server racks for quantum-safe drives and built an air-gap vault, a fortress of paranoia. Mira, restless, traveled south to lecture on pigment analysis and returned with vials of Oaxaca cochineal because color, she said, was penicillin for the soul. Clara mailed Theo's sister Vallotton's restored watch. No letter, only the ticking. Night draped the loft in charcoal. Dorian climbed the iron stair to the roof. The wind salted. He rotated one last forged indulgence under the city's sodium glow. Ink perfect to the naked eye, but that reversed S, signum non salus, mocked any desire for finality. He sealed the sheet, the vial of synthetic gall, the spent thermite detonator in a gunmetal box stamped, "Evidence. Do not destroy." Artifacts of sins interrupted. He flipped the Hypatia drachma into the damp night. It clinked, owl side up. Ink may burn, stone may weather, but shadows linger. Somewhere beyond the bay, another fragment waited. Quiet, priceless, dangerous, whispering that the work of guardians never truly ends. And deep inside the loft, the Codex Chronicles turned their next inevitable page. 6 weeks later, the loft smelled of varnish and new copper wire. Dorian Blake stood before a half-assembled Faraday cage the size of a shipping container, Leo's latest bulwark against the realities of quantum interception. He should have felt triumph. Instead, he tasted rust in his mouth. The Shadow Exemplar's safety had purchased only a fragile lull. Beyond the Bay Bridge, container horns groaned like tired war elephants, and somewhere within that metallic chorus another scheme, another casualty, certainly waited its cue. First, Professor Giles Harrow's emergency call arrived at 2:07 local, the hour when a city's neon chatter slips into uneasy dreams. His voice, usually burnished with wry optimism, rattled like loose type. "Bodleian Stackfire," he said without greeting. "Pallium Project Chamber. One intern hurt, smoke inhalation. But listen, your ultraviolet hash file, the one Lehman embedded in the exemplar, has been stolen. The server rack is slag." "Physical breach?" Dorian asked. "Routed through the air ducts. An acid fogger disabled the halon. They left a calling card." Harrow coughed. Or rather, half a card. A photograph pinged through, a severed left hand cradling soot-black vellum. Ink shimmered gun blue under a forensic torch. The line read "Plenary Indulgences Power." The killer's Latin was slide rule perfect this time. Practice, Dorian thought grimly, makes dismemberment precise. Meera Patel, roused by the ringtone, leaned over the conference table wearing a sweatshirt flecked with vermilion paint. "Same synthetic gall?" she asked. "Oxidative spectra match mine's," Harrow rasped. "Police here haven't seen it yet. I'm calling you first because the vellum fragment, well, it's cut from a 12th century Oxford palimpsest I catalogued myself. Someone gutted a psalter to fake a Gutenberg scrap. That's vengeance and scholarship in one blade stroke." Leo Zhang's fingers hovered above his keyboard. "I'll wake the air gap vault," he muttered, a threat reserved for only the worst of digital storms. Clara Reyes stood in the doorway, canvas jacket half-buttoned, service pistol holstered low on her thigh. "Trip to England, then. I'll book the red eye." "No," Dorian said. "We split. Clara and I to Oxford. Meera and Leo stay here. Autopsy the Pallium server images once Harrow ships the drives." He met their eyes in turn. "Someone used the exemplar's metadata to open a new front. We can't guard one vault by abandoning the other." Dusra. Oxford greeted them with damp October leaves sluicing along curbstones and the creaking wheeze of centuries-old hinges. At the Bodleian's Clarendon Annex, soot still drifted like lazy snow inside the breach corridor. A young librarian in nitrile gloves guided them to the proof room where Pallium project engineers had once calibrated multispectral arrays. Now wires dangled in blackened curls, and the stainless steel server chassis crouched like a mortally wounded animal, its drive bays molten. Clara knelt beside a medical gurney spattered with iodine. "Victim?" "Amir Halabi," the librarian said. "MPhil candidate. He inhaled phosphoric aerosol, but he'll live. They knocked him out cold before the fire." Dorian's gaze snagged on a small brass plate bolted to the floor. The screw heads were medieval slotted, not Phillips, anachronistic even for Oxford. He pried one loose with a penknife. Below the plate lay a cavity no larger than a Bible, lined with lead. Clara whistled softly. Hidden deposit. Inside sat a velvet satchel sealed with crimson wax. Dorian broke the seal. Out slid a single quire, 4 folios of Summa Theologiae printed by Peter Schoeffer in 1473. Margins wide, text block crisp. On the bottom leaf, someone had scribbled today's date and 12:21 GMT, the moment, Harrow later confirmed, that smoke bombs triggered the Bodleian alarms. The thief had staged a reverse heist, planting a priceless incunable rather than stealing one, and left the severed hand as punctuation. Why deposit treasure in a library already overloaded with it? Dorian thought of chess again. Sacrifice a rook to hide the king's advance. Moondrum. Leo's call woke them in the Randolph Hotel at dawn. Got the log files, he said. Fire suppression disabled by a rootkit compiled on a prototype quantum workstation. Manufacturer code name Phi-CRADLE. Only one lab is running that architecture. Meissner Solutions, Zurich. He paused, letting the name reverberate. Meissner was the computing wing of Alt-R Stiftung. Any clue who pulled the trigger? Dorian asked. An operator handle, Wraith Palimpsest. I fed it through 6 darknet markets. 0 hits until 3 days ago. An English-language forum devoted to medieval heresies. Wraith posted a 256-bit slug that decrypts to a GPS coordinate in France. Chartres? Clara arched a brow. Home of the cathedral where Gutenberg apprenticed, if you believe the romantic version. Dorian remembered the reversed S watermark. Signum non salus. Fact and legend were shuffling decks. Nangavde. Chartres at dusk was an oil painting of burnished slate and gilt spires. They quartered in a convent guest house whose Wi-Fi password quoted St. Jerome. Clara covertly disabled the CCTV in their hallway. Old habits pulsed like muscle memory. The GPS coordinate mapped to Atelier des Éblouis, a disused textile factory on the Eure River. Inside, modern equipment hummed beneath Gothic arches repurposed as overhead crane tracks. At the center stood an exact replica of Gutenberg's press. Servo motors sleek, iron studs polished to mirror. But unlike Lehmann's Mainz machine, this one printed not on parchment, it printed on polymer sheets impregnated with graphene. Mira, video linking from San Francisco, whispered through Dorian's earpiece. Graphene substrate can carry terahertz range data. They're forging artifacts and hard drives simultaneously. Electronic palimpsests, books that were also servers. A figure emerged from behind a drying rack, face hidden by a welder's shield. He raised both hands, fingers splayed to show no weapon. When he lifted the visor, Dorian felt the floor tilt. Amir Halabi, the supposedly comatose Oxford intern, stood before them, left wrist bandaged but intact. I staged the Bodleian breach, Amir said in a rush, eyes shiny with adrenaline and guilt. I needed to flush you out before Wraith Palimpsest did. Altar framed me after I discovered their endgame. Data laundering. They print counterfeit indulgences embedded with white supremacist manifestos, then seed them through rare book trades. In 50 years, a scholar photographs the sheet, decodes the manifesto, thinks it's 15th century theology. History as Trojan horse, Clara muttered. Amir gestured toward a ventilated cabinet. Inside lay dozens of polymer folios, ink shimmering like oil on ice. Each carries a micro-ledger of donor names, crypto wallets belonging to extremist cells. The artifacts will pass from archive to archive, funding hate for decades. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Amir paled. That'll be Wraith. Eindavde. Battle was brief and brutal. 2 operators clad in fire-resistant jumpsuits burst through the loading bay, tasers crackling. Clara rolled beneath the first dart salvo, landed a heel kick that folded a kneecap. Dorian feinted left, drew the attacker's weight onto an unstable crate, then disarmed him with a blow from a copper composing stick. Poetic justice delivered in 16 ounces of metal. When the warehouse fell silent save for coolant pumps, Amir braced against a loom frame. "These aren't the core," he said, nodding at the polymer stash. "They're decoys. The master cache ships tonight to the Milan Exposition of Sacred Arts. Alt-R sponsors a private preview in the crypt under Santa Maria delle Grazie." Leo's voice crackled across the open comm channel. "I'm patching Lombardy customs. Flight manifest shows a Meissner Solutions charter landing in Linate at 1840. Cargo, liturgical furnishings. I'll push a red flag." "That buys a few hours," Dorian said. "Not enough." He turned to Amir. "You're coming with us." Amir's smile was rueful. "Number I have to stay and wipe this press, overwrite the firmware so Meissner can't resurrect it. I burned my scholarship when I peeled back their ledger. Finishing this is all I can do." Clara offered a slim silver headset. "Remote link me your video feed. If hostiles return, I'll call the gendarmes. They trust my badge more than yours." Amir slid the headset on. "Tell Harrow I'm sorry I torched his server." "Aravde." Milan vibrated at the intersection of couture and confession, its marble streets echoing with vespers and the low chant of evening mass. Santa Maria delle Grazie loomed ahead, Dominican brickwork glowing beneath floodlights. Within its refectory, Leonardo's Last Supper watched over a different sort of sacrament, a velvet-roped gala, where patrons sipped Barolo beside glass cases containing linen sheets inked in Florentine black. Helena Cloth, flown in by private jet, flanked Dorian as they entered in the guise of insurers again. She wore midnight blue silk. Beneath the fabric, a Kevlar vest peeked when she breathed. "Intelligence says Pfalzgraf will debut the forgeries at 9, she murmured. "Each sheet will auction via blind QR code. Proceeds routed through phantom foundations." Clara, earpiece nested behind a false pearl, scanned the crowd. Spotters at 4 and 10 o'clock. Swiss ear-trimmed beards, ident chips in their lapels. Those are Meissner embeds. Dorian's gaze climbed the refectory wall. High above, Leonardo's Christ reached toward bread and wine. Gestures halted at the edge of decay. Dorian felt the tension of that unfinished moment press against his own ribs. History was always in the act of being violated, even by neglect, now by design. The lights dimmed. A hush spread. Baron Reichardt von Pfalz strode onto a marble dais, bespoke tuxedo cloaked in priest black. In his gloved hands he held a folio, inside an ammonia-sealed acrylic sleeve. "Friends of tradition," he began, voice smooth as altar wine. "It is said the printed word freed Europe from ignorance. Tonight we free it from those who would chain heritage to shame." He lifted the folio. "Behold the dawn of a pure archive." The crowd erupted in muted applause. On a side screen, QR codes bloomed like plague sores, each tied to an anonymous wallet address. Leo's voice thundered in their earpieces. "I penetrated Meissner's wallet relay. If you get me a root token, I can reverse every bid. Donate the funds to the International Rescue Committee instead." Helena nodded in the dark. "Root token will be on Pfalzgraf's personal device. Clara." Already moving, Clara weaved through opera patrons, silver tray in hand, masquerading as catering staff. A spilled Bordeaux, a startled baron, a deft swap. The tokenized smart card slipped into Clara's glove, while a clone card entered his breast pocket. "Your Excellency, so sorry." She wiped Merlot from his sleeve. He waved her away, irritated but distracted. Meanwhile, Dorian approached the display case. He flashed an insurer's micro-UV torch. The sheet's watermark glowed, the crossbow S identical to the shadow exemplar, but oriented 90 degrees counterclockwise. A new signature. Mira's voice, piped through satellite link, hissed in his ear. "Rotation embeds a second ledger. Turn the folio so the S aligns upright. There's likely a nested key pointing to the next storage site." "How do we rotate a sheet sealed in acrylic?" Dorian whispered. Helena smiled without humor. "Distraction," she said, and pulled the fire alarm. Sprinklers rained over haute couture, strings hissed in amplifier feedback, patrons shrieked as water spotted silk. In the chaos, Clara slapped the root token against her phone. Leo sucked down hexadecimal code like honey. Helena shattered the display glass with a stanchion pole, snatched the acrylic case, and hurled it to Dorian. Yeram. Outside, sirens converged. Dorian and Clara ducked into a service alley, folio shielded beneath Clara's raincoat. Helena peeled off in the opposite direction, diving into a Maserati that roared toward Malpensa Airport, bait for the Meisner hounds. Dorian's phone vibrated. Leo. Funds rerouted. $94 million headed to humanitarian escrow, but Meisner deployed kill switch malware. We have 5 minutes before the polymer sheets self-immolate. Then we decode fast, Dorian muttered. They found shelter in a dim locksmith shop, the owner busy watching Serie A highlights. On a workbench, Dorian unscrewed the acrylic lid. With cotton gloves, he rotated the sheet until the crossbow S pointed due north. Under Clara's phone light, microtext flowered in the margins, previously invisible. Mundus novus est, scriptus incinere. The new world is written in ash. Below, a string of digits. Clara recognized GPS coordinates immediately. 2.985 degrees south, 104.756 degrees east. She blinked. Palembang, Sumatra. Dorian's pulse quickened. That's where Chinese historiographers believe Gutenberg acquired his tin antimony alloy formula, the lost Indonesian connection. If Pfalzgraf or Solomon's remnants controlled a foundry there, they could mint endless counterfeit-type metal, each ingot embedding cryptocurrency and propaganda. Leo cut in, voice tight. Interpol chatter, Meissner charter jet diverting to Singapore. Likely heading for Sumatra after refuel. I booked you on a military cargo hop leaving Milan in 2 hours. Seating's a canvas sling. Don't complain. Clara reloaded her Sig Sauer. Wouldn't dream of it. Yettavde. Sumatra greeted them with air thick as steamed silk. At dawn, the Musi River unfurled like a bronze ribbon, barges carrying rubber and dreams toward the Java Sea. Through customs charade and a rented tuk-tuk, they reached Sungai Jerong Industrial Estate, a relic oil complex now repurposed as everything from shrimp paste factory to drone foundry. Amir Halabi, patched in on secure satellite, relayed live thermal scans. Building 7B shows a 90-degree hotspot consistent with induction furnaces. Power draw spikes every 6 hours, casting cycles. Inside the corrugated warehouse, they found rows of graphite crucibles, each pouring shimmering rivulets of molten alloy into casters shaped like Gutenberg's movable type molds. But these blocks carried micro-etchings on their shoulders, electrum circuits forming NAND lattices. A technician in Meissner livery saw zero intrusion before Clara stun-dropped him. They dragged him behind slag barrels. From his badge, Dorian learned the project name, Phantom Script. Leo, remote hacking through a hijacked telecom tower, spoke into their earbuds. I'm inside Phantom Script's PLC controls. Give me 5 minutes and every induction coil smelts itself. No, Dorian said. Not self-destruct. Recast. Leo hesitated. To what spec? Genuine 15th century alloy. Lead, tin, antimony in 168 to 73 to 19 ratios. I emailed you the metallurgy before takeoff. Clara grinned. You're turning their factory into an authenticity engine. Deviati. Furnaces roared down to idle, then reignited on new temperature curves. Mira, patching data from the Smithsonian alloy archives, calibrated them like a maestro. Molten metal hissed into fresh molds, a run of 42-line Bible sorts the world hadn't seen since pre-Reformation Mainz. Dorian located the warehouse's climate vault. Behind biometric readers lay pallets of polymer indulgences bound for air freight. He pulled a random box. Each folio's microledger now pointed not to extremist coffers, but to UNESCO's Cultural Heritage Fund. Leo's earlier wallet inversion replicating across thousands of sheets. Outside, Meissner security sirens wailed. Through dingy skylights, Dorian glimpsed rotor blades, a corporate chopper descending. Pfalzgraf strode from the cabin, flanked by two mercenaries in ex-Bundeswehr kit. His gaze settled on molten metal streaming into honest molds. Rage crinkled his polished forehead. Clara's rifle cracked once. Hot brass tinked against steel. A mercenary spun, dropped. The other raised a submachine gun, but Amir, speaking through a commandeered loudspeaker somewhere in France, triggered the overhead cranes. 10-ton girders swung like pendulums, smashing the gunner flat. Dorian approached Pfalzgraf, hands bare, no weapon. Up close, the Baron no longer looked ecclesiastical. He looked afraid. Molten tin antimony light flickered across his face. "You wanted a pure archive," Dorian said. "Here it is, purified by context, by truth, by voices you tried to erase." Pfalzgraf spat. "You think you've stopped anything? Ideas are seeds. They travel on the wind." "Then we'll cultivate better soil," Dorian replied. Badtavde. Interpol planes rumbled over Palembang by midnight. Pfalzgraf left Sumatra in steel cuffs. Meissner's board blamed rogue actors. Leo ceded the rewritten ledgers to every major academic blockchain. Historians awoke to find UNESCO flush with crypto and a new trove of genuine movable type waiting in Washington for metallurgical testing. At the loft a week later, foghorns moaned like old whales. Mira arrayed 3 alloy blocks on the mahogany table. "They are perfect," she whispered. "Composition within 0.2% of Mainz samples. We've effectively resurrected Gutenberg's toolbox." Leo pushed a laptop across the table. "Interpol video link in 60 seconds. They want to cede custody of the Phantom script archives to us, for cleaning, classification, eventual public release." Helena Cloth, dialing in from Zurich, added another surprise. "Cloth and Rouser will underwrite a travelling exhibit, Ink Against Shadows. Your conditions, open access, fair trade digitization, are accepted." Dorian's shoulders sagged, weight shifting from vigilance to fatigue. Clara handed him a tin coffee mug. "It doesn't end," she reminded gently, "but the page has turned." He walked to the window. Beyond, sunrise bruised the sky violet. He removed a single polymer folio from his coat pocket, the one salvaged at Santa Maria delle Grazie. Tiny LEDs twinkled beneath the graphene like buried constellations. He thought of Amir, unknown horizons of redemption. He thought of Halabi's server slag, of Chartres dust, of molten type recast into honesty. He thought of hands severed and hearts yet unsevered. A memory surfaced. Harrow, on the first day of tutorials, quoting Caxton, "If this shall be a shelved and accomplished, let every man do his part." The apprentice's oath. Dorian lifted the folio into dawn light. Ink sparkled. The future was already writing itself across this reinvented parchment, and guardians had no luxury of rest. Shadows linger, but ink endures. He set the folio on the sill beside the Hypatia drachma and watched the city exhale. Then he opened a fresh notebook, dipped a fountain pen, and drafted the next entry of the Codex Chronicles. The work, after all, had only just begun.